This is a special podcast presentation from 700WLW.com. This is Doc Thompson On Demand.
Doc Thompson at 700 WLW. And now, a lesson on civility. From right here. It's amazing. A lesson on civility was given to the entire world from the tri-state. A lesson on civility was given Monday afternoon for the entire world to see from the tri-state. The tri-state teaching the world something about civility, and proper conduct, and open forums of discussion. A lesson on civility. I'm going to lay out this lesson on civility primarily with audio clips. I'm going to just play a bunch of audio clips. Not as much commentary as maybe I'd normally make, because I think it speaks for itself. The first clip is the lesson on civility from our own Vice President, Joe Biden, speaking to the AFL-CIO on Monday.
You are the only folks keeping the barbarians from the gates. You are the only non-governmental power. The only non-governmental power. The only one that has the power and the capacity to stop this onslaught. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why they want you so badly. The middle class is under attack because labor is under the most direct assault in generations. You know, to state it simply what I stated 2 years ago at some of your national conventions, the other side has declared war on labor's house, and it's about time we stand up.
Vice President Biden being very civil in the tri-state on Monday in terms like onslaught, attack, assault, war, pounding the podium. A very civil human being. About the time he was doing that, there was a big rally going on in Michigan the president spoke at. Before the president got on stage, Jim Hoffa was speaking at the event. Another lesson on civility.
We got to keep an eye on the battle that we face, a war on workers. And you see it everywhere. It is the Tea Party. And you know there's only one way to beat and win that war. The one thing about working people is we like a good fight. And you know what? They got a war with us, and there's only going to be one winner. It's going to be the workers of Michigan and America. We're going to win that war. President Obama, this is your army. We are ready to march. Let's take these son of a bitches out and give America back to America where we belong. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The very civil Jim Hoffa also teaching the world about public discourse and that it's okay to disagree with people. You can do so in a very calm manner. Be civil to them. Saying things like war, 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 fight, war with us, your army, we will march, take out those sons of bitches. The very civil Jim Hoffa. You don't think it's civil? Of course it's civil. Yes, it's civil. Because we've been told by some of those same people in the past that civility is very important. Well, when terms like that were used in the past, like war and marching and take out, take back, stuff like that, we've been told in the past by some of those same people in their party and their party supporters and their party leadership, even by the president himself, that we should have a civil public discourse. We've just got to all calm down a little bit, take a step back, and treat each other better. When there have been questions of people like Sarah Palin having crosshairs on certain congressional districts, saying they're going to be a target, said you can't use words like target. No, that's not civil. Someone could act on it. When Gabby Giffords and many others were shot in Arizona, afterwards people came out and said, listen, you must be civil. You cannot get people fired up like that. That rhetoric is dangerous. You can't do it. So the vice president who works for the president, who's told us these same things. In fact, the president spoke at that memorial to the people who were shot alongside Gabby Gifford. He told us that we must stop the rhetoric. We must come together. We must be civil. So since those people have told us about civility for such a long time, I can only imagine that what they're saying is civil. I mean, they've told us that we have to be civil. So I'm going to take them at their word that they consider the things that they've said civil. Again, Joe Biden from the tri-state on Monday.
You are the only folks keeping the barbarians from the gates. You are the only non-governmental power. The only non-governmental power. The only one that has the power and the capacity to stop this onslaught. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why they want you so badly. The middle class is under attack because labor is under the most direct assault in generations. You know, to state it simply what I stated 2 years ago at some of your national conventions, the other side has declared war on labor's house, and it's about time we stand up.
Our vice president being very civil. Once again, civility on stage right before the president spoke from Jim Hoffa in Michigan. The president didn't say what he said was wrong, so I guess he considers this very civil.
We got to keep an eye on the battle that we face, a war on workers. And you see it everywhere. It is the Tea Party. And you know, there's only one way to beat and win that war. The one thing about working people is we like a good fight. And you know what? They got a war. They got a war with us. And there's only going to be one winner. It's going to be the workers of Michigan and America. We're going to win that war. President Obama, this is your army. We are ready to march. Let's take these son of a bitches out and give America back to America where we belong. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Barbarians at the gate, war with us, march, attack, take them out, onslaught, assault. These things are all considered now, I guess, to be civil. Glenn and Mason, those things are civil?
Doc, I mean, I feel your pain, Doc. I'm kind of like Bill Clinton. I feel your pain, Doc. But I think you're fighting a losing war.
No, wait a second. I have no pain there. I'm just trying to define what is civil.
Well, Doc, I honestly think we passed that mark back when we had the Republican convention here. Not convention, but a rally here in Cincinnati. Remember when Willie pulled the whole Hussein Obama card and John McCain came out and said, I don't want to be a part of that because we know that that's just dog whistle politics. Doc, again, I would love for it to go back to the civility that you want it to be. But, Doc, we passed that.
No, Glenn, don't misunderstand.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not saying what I want there. I'm trying to define civility.
Well, civility passed out the door, Doc, when you had people showing up to political rallies with semi-automatic machine guns and slogans that say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Doc, water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants. It was the same T-shirt. Yes,
hang on a second. That's real quick, just so people know. That's a famous quote by Thomas Jefferson. Yes.
And Timothy McVeigh wore that same slogan and T-shirt when he blew up the Oklahoma City building that killed innocent men, women, and children. Doc, have you heard the latest quotes from the Koch brothers?
No. I don't want to get off the topic. I don't want to get on to your. Hold on a second. Hold on, Glenn.
Go ahead.
Hold on. I don't want to get off on your crazy Koch brother fantasies or conspiracies. I'm talking. No. I'm talking about civility.
Well, no,
Are those? No. I'm not going off the Koch brothers. This is what
you tried to say it was crazy.
Glenn,
and what I said wasn't crazy.
Glenn, hang on a second.
Oh, go
I'm
ahead,
asking about civility. Is what Vice President Biden and Jim Hoffa said, is that civil? Is that civil discourse?
I would suggest, in comparison to people showing up to rallies with guns and slogans that admit the
Now, wait a minute. First, Glenn, you said that we've passed civility, and now you're saying by comparison. So which is it?
Well, I would put it this way. You're going to talk about the video game, Doc. I think that's totally outrageous. I think it shows a lack of class and couth. I think we can both agree with that. Wouldn't you, Doc?
No, I don't have a problem with the video game.
I don't think you should put political figures out there. I hate the fact that in this...
But real quick, just so people know, it's a video game that you can see on my blog at 700WLW.com. I'll get to it in a minute. Glenn, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with the things that's been said. I don't have a problem with people speaking passionately and using terms like war and attack, because I think most reasonable people recognize we use those terms when we're talking about competition.
Exactly.
We use them about, we say the Bengals are going to be at war with the Browns and they went on the attack.
Take offense to that, and I can understand
exactly. The problem is,
you're in a game.
The problem is, Glenn, it's the hypocrisy. Back then, when all of these things were said, and people attacked Sarah Palin and whoever, and Gabby Giffords, people saying you shouldn't say those things or it'll cause the Gabby Gifford situations, I said I don't have a problem with those things. It's not wrong. And I don't have a problem with what Biden said or Jim Hoffa said. The problem is Biden and Hoffa and the party they support and the ideas they support have a problem with what they've said if you base it on the past. Let me give you an example. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the head of the DNC, after Gabby Giffords was shot, did the rounds, and she had to say this.
It's our responsibility to make sure that we set the right example and set the tone of civility. But the shock jocks and the political movement leaders that are out there on both sides of the aisle need to have some pause as well. I mean, the phrase that you just used, we use ballots, not bullets. The actual reverse of that phrase was used in my district by someone who was almost the chief of staff to an incoming member of Congress, where she said at a rally, at a Tea Party rally, we will use bullets if ballots don't work. So the rhetoric outside needs to be toned down as well, but we have to set the first example.
All right. That was the head of the DNC after Gabby Giffords was shot. She has not come out to condemn Jim Hoffa's lines. She has not come out to condemn Biden's lines. The president, who spoke, as I said, at that memorial, has not condemned either one of them. Very few have condemned it. I don't want to condemn. I don't think what they said is wrong. As I said, I don't have a problem with what they said. I recognize it, just as I didn't have a problem with some of the other things that were said. People speak passionately, and reasonable people understand what you mean when you say we're at war. You're talking about competition. But these same people, for political gain, were saying how outrageous those things were in the past. Where are they now? Is it like Glenn, that we've just passed civility and somehow they can justify it that way? Well, when specifically asked about it, Debbie Wasserman Schultz had this to say.
My official response is that we need to make sure that we focus on the middle class and working families, and that we bring everyone in this country together from both sides of the aisle to focus like a laser on continuing to get this economy turned around.
So wait a minute.
That should be our priority.
But wait a minute. Jimmy Hoffa Jr. said, let's take these sons of bitches out and give America back to where America we belong. And that's your response to it?
My response is that we should be working together.
Again,
and
still not addressing
on it. Creating jobs. You know, when I'm home, I was just home in South Florida before we're coming back into session this week, and what people talked to me about in the town hall meetings that I held were, Debbie, we need you to focus on job creation. We need to make sure that you guys go back to Washington and work together. We need to make sure we don't.
I'm not talking about. I'm looking for a specific response to what Jimmy Hoffa said yesterday.
I know you would like.
Well, I would love to. You're the head of the DNC.
I know you'd like to focus on language. That's not what the American people are focused on.
It was very serious language.
The American people are focused on job creation.
Okay, see, at that point, the American people aren't focused on that. If you want to focus on language, that's what Debbie's. But Debbie has focused on language in the past. They've all focused on that language in the past. That's the whole point. Where's the consistency here? In fact, here's a collage of just a couple of random Democrats. You had a congressman from Missouri. I think Kirsten Gillibrand is in there. James Clyburn is in there. All talking after Gabby Giffords was shot. And they were condemning the lack of civility. Yet none of them have spoken out against Jim Hoffa and Joe Biden.
Either need to turn down the volume, begin to try to exercise some high level of civility, or this darkness will never, ever be overcome with light. The hostility is here. It is real, and if we don't stop it soon, I think this nation is going to be bitterly divided to a point where I
do think that this discussion
of
how we conduct ourselves is important.
We are responsible for what we say.
Jim Clyburn.
And I do believe that using that kind of rhetoric in no way enhances the politics of this country. And so I don't feel that I spoke too soon at all, because I have been saying for months that we need to cool it. In fact, I've been saying that for a long time, because I've experienced this.
Their lack of condemnation on this is deafening. The silence from them is deafening on this. So then you have to ask yourself, if they don't think this is uncivil and they thought other stuff was, why? What's the difference? Well, whether it's Democrat or Republican, they're doing what politicians do. Capitalizing at any given moment off of whatever's out there. And when you bring up something like this on how they preach civility but don't act it, there's a couple of responses you get. When you call them out for them not practicing what they preach, you get a couple of things, and you probably noticed it there. Number one, they play the victim. Just as Jim Clyburn did. I've been the victim of name-calling in the past. They'll also point out that their opponents don't denounce, something like this, which they also did. Debbie Wasserman Schultz started to do that. And then they also claim, like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that that's not what the American people are talking about. It's politics. And we don't need any of that right now. It's not the lack of civility that we should be concerned about. It's the lack of leadership. Doc Thompson, 700 WLW. Doc Thompson on the big one, 700 WLW. The game that Glenn and Mason mentioned, I put it on my blog at 700WLW.com. Tea Party zombies must die. One of those shooting games, video games where you shoot zombies or whatever. There used to be one, Area 51, that I love to play. It's kind of like that if you're familiar with it, but the zombies are all Tea Party people, and they have the characters all laid out. Here's the redneck Tea Party guy, whatever, and they describe it, and they go through several different Tea Party type stereotypical characters. Then they actually have some politicians. Anybody, Sarah Palin, Michelle Bachmann, Huckabee, all kinds of them. And their heads are on them, on the zombies, and you're shooting them. I think it's actually kind of funny when you see the characters described. It's kind of funny. Go there and check it out. You can comment as well. Just go to 700WLW.com. You'll see my goofy head up in the upper right corner of the main page. You click on it, you can see what the Tea Party Zombies Must Die video game looks like, and you'll see if you watch the little video, the different characters. Kind of funny. No, I'm not thinking that they're actually saying they should shoot those people. Come on. I said that back then. I said it now. I just want some consistency from people like Joe Biden and Jim Hoffa, and I want them to stop the hypocrisy. Mike in Hamilton, you're on the big one.
Hey, Doc, it's good to hear you.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be heard.
I just think anytime that you're a public speaker like yourself, you have to use a certain amount of common sense. You have to be civil, and it's a big responsibility of speaking in front of people. You remember quite a few years ago, back when they had radio shows, and this guy got on the air and he was saying, aliens have come, and people started jumping out of windows and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the famous War of the World.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And I mean, that's common sense and being civil and using some responsibility.
That's that's famous Orson Welles' War of the Worlds he did on the East Coast, and people flipped out. They thought they were really being invaded and stuff. You're right. There's a difference. There's a difference between someone going down to a rally, whatever side they're on, and saying, listen, this is a war. We need to take this back. We need to march. We need to whatever. I don't think many people out there are saying, wow, this is a war. Let me get my guns and mortars and tanks and start blowing people up. If I, however, come on the air and say, hey, why don't you get your guns and tanks today and meet me at this corner and we're going to start blowing people up, there's a big difference. It's a difference if I say, hey, meet me down here. We're all going to knock over this liquor store tonight. Bring your guns, and we hope to kill people. Big difference. The problem is not saying those things and saying, we're going to rally the troops and get people all excitable. That's what you do. That's how you inspire people. Nothing wrong with that. And using passionate language that even is compared to war. Because we do it in sports and other competitions all day, every day, and people recognize that. You can't account for the crazies who may misunderstand it, because I could mention the word kumquat on the air and have somebody go, some crazy, that be the buzzword that sets them off. You don't know. Crazies are crazies. They're going to do what crazies do. They're going to be crazy. The rest of us are reasonable and recognize the difference. So maybe stop the hypocrisy and the BS. We don't need it from the president. We don't need it from the vice president. We need it from Jim Hoffa. We don't need it from anybody else. We need leadership. That's what it's going to take. How about instead of jobs, I think what we need to worry about is deer contraceptives. You don't agree? Well, that's what the federal government's worried about. The USDA has a plan to deal with the overpopulation of deer. I will share it with you at 10:52. 700 WL. Doc Thompson on the big one, 700 WLW. Coming up on the big show with Bill Cunningham today. At 106, Ohio officials say that the smoking ban isn't hurting bars. Willie and his guests differ. See, I think it's interesting that the people who push this, the people who support the idea, are the ones saying, no, it's not hurting bars. We've done a study. That's not what I've heard. Maybe in the middle of Ohio where people can't get across the border and drink and smoke together in some other bar in a neighboring state or area, maybe. But I would say in the tri-state, you ask the bars here. You ask the ones here. But we'll find out from Willie and his guest at 106 today on 700 WLW. Andrew joins me now. Andrew, help me with your last name. Is it Berman?
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Andrew Berman is a travel writer for the Huffington Post. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Interesting idea you have. Instead of going to college right off, you study abroad for a year or so.
Yeah, it's always good to get abroad. It's always good to learn, and
I think we can all agree that
hand in hand.
that it's always good to get abroad. I'm thinking 2 or 3 of them, maybe 4 or 5. Study all kinds of them. Now, seriously, I think we've probably lost something. We've got a much smaller world now, and it's not about maybe left or right and studying cultures. It's just getting out and learning a little bit something outside of your little hometown.
Yeah, I think there are definitely 2 things that you learn whenever you travel. And one thing is, you learn about cultures, you learn about different places. But more importantly than that, quite likely, especially for young people, is learning to be resourceful and to take care of yourself. And there's no better way to learn that than to go to someplace where you're uncomfortable.
That is a really good point. And it's different to study and live someplace for a year or so versus traveling there for a week or 2. I know, I've traveled all over the place, and when you move to a new area and you have to find the post office and you have to find the supermarket and you have to find all these different things around town, boy, I mean, that's and the laws and getting a license or whatever it is, that's different than visiting.
It's very different, and the reality is that most of the people that study abroad nowadays are doing it as juniors in college. And it's a good thing because they're about to graduate, they're about to go out in the real world, and not all these people have common sense. They have college education. That's great, wow. But you also need common sense to make it through the day, and you can learn that from traveling.
Andrew, you are absolutely right. I don't know if you guys have interns around, but we get interns here, and I've had them for decades now, coming from college. And there are a great number of them that have no common sense. If you ask them about things they've learned in school or how to apply, absolutely. But if you go, hey, can you run down and take care of this? Unless you give them a flow chart specific what to do, they have no clue. They can figure nothing out.
Well, I refuse to rank on my interns because my interns are all very, very lovely people. But I will speak to myself and say, when I was that age, I was clueless. I'm still largely clueless, but I was more clueless then. And I feel like if I'd spent more time abroad, if I'd spent more time traveling and being uncomfortable, then maybe I would have had more skills as I came out of college.
No, I mean, we certainly had some good interns. I'm not saying that, but there are a lot of them that just are not prepared for that, and they think they are because they're in college and they've been in college a couple of years, and there's a big difference.
Oh, it's very different. College is not the world. Would that the world were like that, but it's not.
So, did you study abroad, or have you just traveled a lot?
I did. I studied abroad in England. Not terribly exotic, but interesting nonetheless.
You learn a whole lot being there. Where else have you traveled to? You're the travel writer.
I've lived in Uganda, Cambodia.
Wow.
Obviously England. So I've actually lived abroad a fair number of places at this point. And
how long did you live in places like Cambodia and Uganda?
I was in Uganda for, I think, about 5 months. I was in Cambodia for about 18 months, about a year and a half.
And have you traveled many other places just as vacations and whatnot?
Oh, yeah, you bet. Been a lot of places. 6 or 7 continents. Have not made it to Antarctica yet, unfortunately.
Hopefully you get that one done soon, right?
Yeah, soon enough, right?
What are your favorite places to travel? What are the places that you just go spectacular, that everyone should go see?
Well, I think that, there are 2 different types of travel. There are places that I would recommend for people like myself. I'm quite young, and I generally travel on a very, shoestring budget. So for people like me, I would recommend Sri Lanka. Is actually a really beautiful and now a very, very safe country without many tourists in it. Really good time to go.
Real quick,
a lot of people there speak English.
Sri Lanka, did I just see, I think it was Sri Lanka that just opened up the really big hotel with the pool and that on the roof? Does that sound familiar?
It may have been. I'm not sure, to be honest. But,
okay.
They are opening any number of tourist facilities, and it is one of these places that is going to be flooded by middle-aged Europeans wearing bikinis they should not be wearing. That is going to be what it looks like in 5 years. Right now, it looks great. Another place is, I always recommend Costa Rica. It's very easy to get to. It's a little bit exotic. People there generally bilingual, which is really helpful. So you can ask questions in English, and it's just a really pleasant country.
Is it pretty safe there?
Very safe, yeah.
Because you get down, you get down into South America. There's a lot of trouble down there. Brazil, I don't know what they're going to do for the Olympics. That's one of the least safe places for Americans to travel.
It is and it isn't. I mean, if you're smart about it, it doesn't have to be super dangerous, but they do have a real problem on their hands if they're going to be flooded with tourists, and they absolutely are. They're still trying to figure out what they're going to do, and that date is looming.
And it's a shame because I would love to see Brazil. I mean, I'm fascinated by the just the geography and topography, couldn't get the word out, and Carnival and this. Yeah, that would be very cool.
Yeah, and hopefully by the time it's done hosting these big events that it has upcoming, you'll feel more comfortable going down there. But I mean, right now there is the chance that if you go down there, you get the surprising diversion in the trunk of somebody's car, and kidnapping's a problem. And the reality is, it doesn't happen to many people, but it's a risk, and that puts people off.
But think about what you would learn in the cultural experience being kidnapped and stuffed in the trunk of a car at gunpoint. Think about the life experience, Andrew. That would be incredible.
True. You would learn skills like how to get duct tape off your face.
That would be amazing. If you survived it, it probably would be pretty cool. But that whole survived it thing may be a bit of a problem. I haven't traveled a whole lot of places. I've traveled, Canada and Mexico, Italy, France, Korea. But that's my list.
That's a pretty good list.
Yeah, it's pretty good. The neat thing about traveling to places, and I noticed this when I was in Korea, where the language is so different that you don't even recognize the characters. You look at a sign and you're like, I don't even know. I mean, if you go to Italy or, you could kind of figure out the words. You're like, I think that's bathroom. Is that sausage? What is that? But if you're in, China or something, you're like, I have no idea what those characters are. That's exotic.
That is exotic, and I also think it teaches you how to communicate in a really different way. I speak fluent hand. It's just me waving and pointing at things, but it's very effective. I've really refined it over the years, and now I feel like I can really communicate a point without having to speak English, and that is really helpful. I mean, especially now in America, it's sometimes helpful.
I think if you're nice and you struggle to try to speak their language, most people are pretty forgiving. Even in France, who they have the stereotype of that they're pretty arrogant unless you speak French. When I was there, we only had one rude person out of many that I asked help. And I tried in French to say a couple of things here and there, and they were all very gracious. Except one.
I think the thing is, if you make a good effort, people all over the world are pretty sympathetic, and they like that you're interested in where they live. That's a compliment. So I think, by and large, people will reach out to you. In Paris, if you're going to have a problem anywhere, it's going to be in Paris, but you probably won't.
Well, I think that's a good thing to bring up about how we look at people when they travel here. If they're arrogant and they're just expecting you to speak their language, you're like, get the hell away from me. But if they're struggling through and they're like, most Americans are pretty helpful. Oh, I'll help you out. Sure, you go down here, you turn left, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a pleasure. It's nice to feel like an expert on something. And And you are an expert to anybody traveling here. So I really don't think it is a bother for most foreigners when we're traipsing about their country.
Which brings up another good point about traveling and studying abroad, and that is you also learn the value in your little hometown. A lot of us are from small towns, and you think to yourself, growing up, I can't wait to get the hell out of this town and away from... And then you see the value in your town and the things you can appreciate in your town, your state, or your country.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think a lot of people grow up with the thought that, oh, this is just nowhere. I'm from nowhere. I'm from this small town, and it's just like every place else. And it's not true. The world's incredibly diverse, and that means that there are a lot of other interesting places, but it also means that where you're from is interesting and unique. And it's good to get a perspective on that by being other places and maybe realizing what makes where you're from different than the rest of the world.
Andrew Berman, travel writer for the Huffington Post. Thanks for joining me, sir.
My pleasure.
Have yourself a great day. And I'll put a link to his stuff on my blog at 700WLW.com. As a parent, would you let your kids study abroad? And I guess if you would, the country they were studying in would probably matter quite a bit, because there's some that are less safe and some you may perceive to be less safe. Hey, coming up at about 10:52, dear contraceptives. Yes, dear contraceptives. 700 WLW. I think about food stamps being used at fast food restaurants. Is that a good idea? Is it a bad idea? I'll give you the details and get your comments. 1106 700 WLW. Let's go to the phone lines now and get to Don and Marion. How are you?
I'm fine. I enjoy your program. Listen to it as much as I can.
Thank you, sir.
My suggestion, and you know what, and I agree with what the fellow says about traveling abroad, but, you know, in the old days, they called that the military.
That's a good point.
If they initiate the draft, bring it back, everybody serves 2 years, regardless of who they are, what they are, men, women, handicapped, what have you. Gives them 2 years to grow up, possibility to decide on a program that they want to get into, some kind of employment, a better idea of what they want to do when they're 2 years older, as opposed to coming out of college with a degree in English literature or what have you.
Something you can't really use.
Something you don't really use.
Radio broadcasting, Don, something that's not respected, not going to make you any money, you know, the worthless people in society.
You guys earn your money there.
Hey, Don, were you in the service?
No, I wasn't. I had three brothers that were. One was in Germany. He's a nurse anesthetist now. He was in the medical corps over there. I had one brother that was stationed in Japan. He has a degree in Japanese business, language, and international law. I have another brother that was in the Air Force. He wanted to teach high school. He got his degree in chemistry and biology, and he just retired.
Why didn't you go in?
I guess I wasn't smart enough.
No, I just asked you that because you know you're all in favor of a draft or something. There was a draft, you'd have been drafted too, likely. Appreciate the call. Thank you so much. I appreciate your brother serving. I was talking with my dad over the weekend about traveling the world, and he was telling my fiance about all the places he'd been when he was in the Marines. And he's naming all of these ports. He's, multiple places in Italy and France, and he was in Turkey. It just went down the list. All of these places that he'd been, and it was on Mediterranean cruises when he was in the Marines. Very, very interesting. Contraceptives for deer. Is it a good idea? How would that play out? How would you... It must be very difficult to get the condoms on him. Well, I'll give you the details. It's not really condoms. It's a deer pill. Next, 700 WLW. Doc Thompson on the big one, 700 WLW. I asked the travel guy about, he's mentioned the hotel in Sri Lanka. No, it's Singapore. I was getting the S's. Yeah, I guess it could have been Spain as well. But it turns out it's in Singapore, and I'm going to put a link. You've got to see this thing. Take me about 5 minutes to get it up there. When you get a chance, go to 700WLW.com and look at this hotel. It is amazing. I can't do it justice. You have to see the pictures. Give me about 5 minutes, put it up, and it'll be there. A pill for deer. Apparently, the deer in America overpopulated. And we gotta take them out. They're causing all kinds of problems, even $1 billion in damage, what it's claimed. People hit them with their cars. In fact, I hit one just a few months back with my car. So instead of just trying to find some simpler method, they've come up with a vaccine It's a contraceptive they want to give to deer. This is done with your tax dollars through the USDA's National Wildlife Research Center. The what? Yes, exactly. The what? The USDA National Wildlife Research Center. They're going to give deer birth control. I guess the deer amnesty, or excuse me, the deer abstinence plans, I guess that didn't work out, the abstinence classes, where they set them all down and said, listen, here's what could happen. They call it aggressive mating. When I first saw aggressive mating, I thought they were talking about Pulse or Cadillac Ranch. No. Aggressive mating from the deer. So they're going to give them shots that will basically sterilize them for up to 5 years. A deer contraceptive. Don't we already have a method of population control for deer? Hunting. Shoot them. Yeah, driving in some cases like me, sure. But if you don't want to do that damage to your car, open up the hunting. Double the amount of time that you could go out and use a bow, you can use a rifle, whatever. Or open up deer hunting with your car. I guess that's a possibility. What's it Ron White said? If you could slow that bullet down to 55 miles per hour and put some headlights on it, you'd be a pretty effective hunter now, wouldn't you? Deer would be just jumping right in front of that bullet. We have a method of deer population control. It's called hunting. So expand the program. No, because this is like something from a bad sci-fi movie. 30 years in the future. We've given deer and other animals, because this could be used on squirrels and stuff too. We've given them this contraceptive that goes haywire and it wipes them all out. It's 30 years in the future. All animals are gone. A deer contraceptive gone awry. That's what it's like. In a world where there's no animals because they gave them deer condoms and taught them abstinence and then gave them deer contraceptives, there will be no more meat. I mean, it's like a bad movie. And there's another simpler way. If you don't like the idea of hunting deer, how about this? You just encourage all the deer to get married. If they get married, they ain't having sex. Doc Thompson, home of the Reds, 700 WL.